right, let's get going. Well, thank you to all of you for being here and welcome to the Early Career Funding Opportunities with the American Psychological Foundation and the APA Committee on Early Career Psychologists. Again, thank you for taking the time to join us on this webinar today. My name is Dr. Dominique Chow, and I am the Chair-elect and Sign Representative on the CECP. Just a few housekeeping notes before we jump in. Please keep your lines muted. We are more than happy to turn on the closed captioning, as that is something that individuals need. Please go ahead and send me a private chat, and I will turn that on for us. We encourage you to submit questions about today's topic in the Q&A box throughout the presentation, and I will be monitoring that for us. The first 40 minutes of this webinar will be a presentation, and the last 15 to 20 minutes we will be opening up for questions. The entirety of the webinar recording will be available on the APF's website should you need to reference back to anything. And now I have the absolute pleasure of introducing to you the speakers of our presentation today. We have Dr. Rebecca Pasillas, who is APF's Program Officer. She is responsible for managing all of APF's awards, fellowships, grants, lectures, prizes, and scholarship programs. Dr. Gemma Petri is APF's Program Coordinator and Science Diplomacy Fellow with the National Science Policy Network, and I will let them take over from here.
Thank you so much, Dominique. I want to thank all of you for being here with us this hour, but also thank you to the American Psychological Association Committee on Early Career Psychologists for partnering with APF on this webinar. Gemma and I are excited to share with you information about the American Psychological Foundation, including funding opportunities offered by APF and tips on submitting a strong grant application. And let me go ahead and start. If we could, Gemma, move it to the next slide, please. Thank you. For those of you who are not familiar with the American Psychological Foundation, we are an independent philanthropic organization that partners with many organizations, including the American Psychological Association. As a nonprofit organization, APF's funding opportunities such as grants and scholarships and many more that I'll discuss later, they're funded by private donors, psychologists like you. Through their generous support, they are investing in advancing psychological science and fostering the careers of graduate students, psychologists, and researchers. Here's APF's mission, and basically our mission is to leverage the power of philanthropy to advance psychological knowledge by investing in innovative research and applications that prioritize people and their well-being. Next slide, please. APF's vision is working towards a world where people are healthy, happy, and living with dignity. I encourage you to check out the About APF webpage to learn more about the American Psychological Foundation. We'll share links to APF's website later in the presentation. Next slide. The APF Board of Trustees, they identified 4 priorities for funding and other initiatives, and they are preventing violence, addressing mind-body health connections, serving marginalized communities, and ending prejudice and stigma. These are the types of research that APF is looking to fund. And later in the presentation, I'll highlight a few APF funding opportunities that focus on these 4 visionary priorities. Next slide. So the APF 2026 funding cycle began November 1st. And we are excited to inform you that applications for the 2026 program year are now open. Please keep in mind that earlier there was a temporary service disruption with our grants management system called Giving Data, but we just got a notice that it's now open, so you should be able to access the website. Here's an overview. We have over 85 funding opportunities, and they include research grants, travel grants, scholarships, fellowships, and awards. The research grants, they fund basic science, clinical research, and dissemination and implementation science. This QR code will take you to APF's funding opportunities webpage, but more importantly, the program match tool, which is what we would like you to check out. Use this tool to search for funding opportunities based on your area of research, and there's other variables too. Now, given that there isn't time for me to highlight all of our 85 plus funding opportunities that APF offers during our time here in the webinar, I really do encourage you to use a program match tool to learn about them. And actually, Gemma will go into more detail about how to use the program match tool in the next slide. If we could go back, Gemma. I also want to go into more detail about how to use the, encourage you to subscribe to APF's newsletter. If you go to that same QR code and scroll a little bit down, you'll see a button titled Sign Up for the Newsletter on the webpage. Click on that button and you can subscribe to our program newsletter that comes out monthly, and it lists upcoming funding opportunities and deadlines. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, Gemma, so you could go over that program match tool.
All right. So before going into further details about APF funding opportunities, I would like to highlight the program match tool that Becky just mentioned. This page is the best starting point for those of you who are looking for funding opportunities that fit your needs. To look for funding opportunities, you can search using the criteria provided: eligibility, topic, sponsor, and type. We often receive questions like, what funding opportunities are available for grad students? Or, I am an early career psychologist. What does APF have for me? So here, this tool, you can use this search tool to select eligibility criteria such as early career psychologist, grad student, psychologist, and so on. For some people who may ask, for example, my research is related to trauma. Which grant can I apply for? You can come here to use the search box and look up the topic that you are interested in. You can also search by type of funding, such as research funding or travel funding. So this search tool is the best, is very helpful way to start exploring APF funding opportunities. And back to you, Becky.
Thanks, Gemma. And we're going to be going back and forth between some of these slides. Yeah, great. Thanks, Gemma. So as you are using the program match tool and you're searching for funding opportunities through there, I do want to take a few moments to note about what type of research that APF supports. So APF does support original, innovative research projects. APF wants to ensure that grants are having an impact both on the field of psychology and psychological science and also on the careers of recipients. And indeed, if any of you are either current recipients or maybe received recipients or soon to be recipients, if you are selected for any of our funding opportunities, APF does ask you to share with us about how their APF funded project contributed to their career development, and whether subsequent funding for their APF funded project led to either expanding their research or related work. So we're interested in knowing more about how the APF funded project contributed to folks' professional work and their research program. While APF does favor unique independent work, we do fund derivative projects that are part of larger studies. Please note that a majority of APF's funding opportunities do support pilot studies. So I did a quick calculation and I wanted to note that 77% of APF's funding opportunities directly support graduate students and early career psychologists and researchers, who are typically the folks that need seed grant funding to build their research program. Finally, I do want to shout out to those who are mid to late career psychologists but new to research. We do have funding opportunities available. Next slide, Gemma. Gemma noted earlier that we receive lots of questions, and so one of the pieces of information I do want to present to you is about the principal investigator. we received questions about the role of the principal investigator. So I want to share, this is what this slide is about, just giving you some background. So the principal investigator listed on the application is the primary contact for APF and APF's grant management system. The PI is responsible for communicating with APF regarding any type of documentation, the disbursement of grant monies, reports, and other related matters. A co-PI or co-PIs, they may be added to an application, but they don't have to meet the eligibility criteria for that funding opportunity. Reviewers may consider the co-PIs or co-PI, the work that the co-PIs have done when reviewing applications, but note that the PI is the primary lead researcher that the review committee will evaluate regarding the competency and capacity to execute the proposed work as noted in the application. The PI as a lead researcher should share any communication with APF. Should share any communication from APF with their co-PI or co-PIs. And finally, it's important to note that APF's policy does not allow a change in the PI. Now I'm going to turn it over to Gemma, who's going to discuss eligibility criteria and the life cycle of APF programs.
Yes, so one of the big questions we always receive is that, am I eligible for this funding opportunity? So before you apply for any APF funding opportunities, it's very important to start by looking carefully at the eligibility section of the program description. So this section will tell you whether you meet the basic requirements for that particular grant or scholarship. There are a few general criteria you should always check. First, career stage. Some programs are designed specifically for certain stages of your professional journey. For example, undergrad student or grad students, doctoral student, early career psychologists or researchers, or psychologists at any career stage. So make sure the program matches where you are in your career. Second, check whether the program is open for psychology and related fields. While many of our programs are for psychologists, some are open to closely related fields if the research aligns with the psychological science. Third, look at the focus of the research topic or the area of study. Some programs support very specific areas such as trauma, mental health, or community psychology, while others are broader. Also, please note, you do not need to be an APA member to qualify for most APF funding opportunities. However, a few programs may require membership in a specific APA division. So if you see that requirement, make sure that you meet it before applying. So again, always begin with the eligibility section. It can save you time and help ensure that your application is the right fit for the program. Another common question that we get is that, can international applicants apply for APF funding? The answer is yes. International students from any country that have diplomatic relation with the US and also meet all other criteria are welcome to apply. You can also apply as many APF funding opportunities as you like. If your work fits multiple programs, go for it. And yes, researchers can receive multiple awards as long as they are for different projects. So keep in mind that each individual project can only receive APF funding once. While other eligibility criteria are easy to check, another very important thing to pay attention is the alignment between your project and the goal and focus of the funding opportunities. So before you apply, make sure your research proposal clearly matches the focus and goal of the funding opportunity you are applying for. That alignment is one of the most important things that reviewers will look for. Now that we have talked about the eligibility and requirements, let's take a look at the program life cycle. What happened from the moment an application opens to the time that project wraps up? First, most APF programs open on November 1st of the year before the program year. For example, if you want to apply for 2026 funding, the application opened on November 1st, 2025. Next, the application deadline will vary by program. You can always find a specific date listed on the program webpage. After the deadline, recipients are notified about 3 to 4 months later. Once recipients are notified, they will need to submit all requirements documents for fund disbursement within 6 months. Those documents also include the IRB approval. After all the paperwork is in, funds are typically disbursed within 2 to 4 weeks. The project officially starts on the date of payment is made. All funds must be used within 12 months of the start date. So project should be planned within that time frame in mind. When the project concludes, recipients have 3 months to submit a final report, summarizing what was accomplished and any outcomes or findings. And finally, there is an impact report due 3 years after the project concludes. This helps APF understand the long-term impact of the work that has been supported. And next, Becky will talks about we'll highlight some program of APF.
Thank you. So the next few slides, as Gemma noted, I'm going to review 4 funding opportunities that support APF's 4 visionary priorities. Each slide will have a QR code, and that QR code will lead you to the website for that funding opportunity, which, as we mentioned earlier, it lists information about that specific funding opportunity, but also eligibility criteria, and then details about the application process. Let me first start with the Direct Action Visionary Grants. 2025 is its inaugural year, and it funds up to $60,000. I recently read an article from the Brown Research on Implementation and Dissemination to Guide Evidence Use, which is a program in the Warren Alpert Medical School at Brown University, and they noted that it takes approximately 17 years for just 14% of research evidence to be used in practice. I cite this statistic because it's important to note that the Direct Action Visionary Grants is the funding mechanism that will shorten the amount of time research is implemented in a real-world setting. It's also a funding mechanism that provides evidence-based interventions and resources that directly address the pressing needs of communities. So a little bit more about Direct Action Visionary Grants. The purpose of this grant is to fund projects that use evidence-based interventions and resources that will support communities in need, as noted here. The grant will consider a project that is evaluating the implementation of the evidence-based interventions, effectiveness, and outcomes in real-world settings. The implementation of the intervention may vary. There are some examples that are listed on the program's webpage, but may include adapting the intervention to the applied setting or translating an evidence-based resource into another language for the community in need. The intervention should have some evidence and be psychologically based, given that this grant, it doesn't fund pilot studies in a research setting. This grant also has a different application process than our other APF grants or other APF funding opportunities. This one involves first submitting a letter of intent, or LOI. These LOIs, they're reviewed on a quarterly basis, and if you go to the webpage, it'll give you the deadlines and the timelines. And only applicants with qualified projects, they will be invited to submit a full application. I strongly encourage you to review the webpage because it has all the deadlines and it also includes important information about the application process for the direct action visionary grants. Let's go to the next slide. I just want to check with Gemma and Dominique. There's construction going on next door. Can you hear me or do you hear the construction? Because I could barely hear myself. Okay. Okay, I'm going by the head nods. Thank you. Okay, the next funding opportunity I want to share with everyone is the Direct Action Crisis Funding Grants. This is another new grant. 2025 is its inaugural year. And due to cuts in federal research funding, APF launched the Direct Action Crisis Funding Grants to help offset the abrupt loss of financial support for critical psychological research. Any doctoral graduate student or early career psychologist with no more than 10 years postdoc that had their funding terminated by the National Science Foundation or the National Institutes of Health, they are eligible to apply. Please note that the projects must be psychological in nature and must have recently been terminated by NSF or NIH. The projects must also support at least one of the 4 visionary priorities listed here. This funding opportunity funds up to $20,000, and we ask that applicants that apply for these funds note what exactly they absolutely necessary need. So it could be, like as noted here, completing a wave of data collection or analyzing collected data or further writing, or maybe just a thoughtful project closure with community partners, or preparing a grant proposal to continue the research. Applicants also must indicate if they have access to any additional bridging funds, because I know those are being offered. The reason for all of this information is because we want to fund as many projects as possible with our limited funds. So please review the webpage for additional details about the application process, including what materials to submit. And we also encourage you to share this funding opportunity with colleagues that meet this eligibility criteria. Next slide, please. Okay, the visionary grants. So this funding opportunity funds pilot projects, and it's only open to graduate students and early career researchers that are no more than 10 years postdoc. This is a seed grant for innovative research, education, and intervention projects that support APF's 4 visionary priorities. Preference will be given to pilot projects that, if they are successful, would be strong candidates for support from major federal and foundation funding agencies. Preference will also be given to demonstration projects that promise to generalize broadly to similar settings in other geographical areas and/or to other settings. This grant funds up to $20,000. And it's important to note that the projects that are like mere contributions to larger funded efforts or add-ons that could or should be carried out under the larger funding effort, those projects are discouraged. Please review the webpage for additional details about the visionary grants. And I believe this year we are planning to fund 10 folks, up to $20,000 each. Okay, we can go to the next one. Oh, thank you. So this last funding opportunity I'll highlight is an award. It's the American Psychological Foundation Gold Medal Award for Impact in Psychology. This award recognizes impactful, innovative, and transformational work. Nominees will be evaluated on several factors, including fit within APF's visionary priorities and APF's mission, which we showed earlier in the slides in the webinar. Psychologists with a doctoral degree at any stage are eligible to be nominated. Self-nominations are not permitted, so ask your colleague or your peers to nominate you for this award. We encourage that. Gold medal recipients will receive a $1,000 award and also a $1,000 travel stipend to attend the annual American Psychological Association convention. They also get recognition in the July-August issue of the American Psychologist. Gold medal recipients will be recognized on APF's website and our various publications, and they are also awarded their award at APF's Impact section. I encourage you to review the webpage again for any additional details about the award and the application process. So those are the 4 programs I wanted to highlight. If you're interested in the other funding opportunities we have, again, I'm going to encourage you to use a program match tool. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Gemma now, who will share some tips.
All right, so let's go over some quick but important tips for submitting strong applications. These tips actually came from our direct experience as screeners. So they are based on what we see most often when reviewing application. First, manage your time wisely. Start early. Many applicants underestimate how long it takes to gather materials, write, and get feedback. Review the eligibility and application requirements well in advance, especially if you are balancing research, teaching, and other works. Give yourself enough time to write, revise, and securing recommendation letters if needed. Second, prioritize quality over quantity. We often see applicants apply to multiple grants at once, but it is very better to focus on a few that truly align with your project goals. Ask yourself, does this project fit the purpose of the grant? Craft a strong, thoughtful proposal that clearly tailored to that specific funding opportunity. Make sure all part of your applications are complete and polished before you submit. Third, be clear and concise. Reviewers read many applications, so make their job easier. Use a clear structure with headers, bullets, or bold text to highlight key information. That helps reviewers quickly understand your project's significance, method, and feasibility. Next, pay close attention to eligibility and guidelines. Before anything else, make sure you are actually eligible for the program. Read all the requirements carefully, review APF FAQ page, and follow every instruction about submission and formatting. If you are still unsure, after checking all those resources, reach out to us. We are very happy to help. Next, provide a detailed budget and justification. Be specific about how you plan to use the funds. Review FAQ page for what expenses are allowed because some items aren't eligible. Focus your budget on the costs that directly support your project success, like materials, data collection, or research assistance. Create a realistic research and project plan. Make sure you have a clear sense of how much time and funding your project will actually need. Reviewers look for well-thought-out timeline and achievable goals. And finally, the use of AI tools. It's perfectly fine to use AI to help you draft, organize, or refine your writing, but make sure that the final content reflects your ideas, your voice, and your experience. Reviewers can feel that if your application is like too generic or impersonal. And I would like to add that in our in APF 26 applications, applicant has to disclose and acknowledge any use of AI in the application, and that's for transparency. So these details might be like small thing, but they are very important and show that you have done your homework and you take this process serious. I mentioned the FAQ page many times. Let me show you one of the most important sections you may need to look at, and it's about budgeting. Different funding agencies have different policy. So it is always a good idea to review APF policy before you submit. On this page, we have contributed a few sections discussing what is considered a direct cost and an indirect cost. There is a section providing example of what counts as direct cost, which are expenses that are considered acceptable for APF. So before you finalize your budget, take a few moments to go through this section on the APF FAQ page. It will help you make sure that your budget aligns with APF expectation and prevent being rejected later on. The information on this page is also very helpful for young researchers in learning how to allocate budgets for their projects. For some of you who are not ready to apply for APF grants yet, there are still ways to engage with APF. One way to build a long-term relationship with APF is to volunteer as an APF reviewer. To become an APF reviewer, you need a doctorate level degree in psychology or related field. And you also need to have expertise in the subject area of the grant. You can sign up by scanning the QR code on this slide. Being an APF reviewer is also a great addition to your resume, and it allows you to learn about the grant process from the reviewer's perspective, which is very helpful. So there are so many ways to have an impact at APF, and the only reason we can continue to offer such incredible grants is because the generosity of our community. You don't have to donate like hundreds of thousands of dollars to make an impact. The small moments of every choice to donate have a big impact when they come together. We invite you to join us in investing in these opportunities for funding by signing up for recurring giving to APF. And if you sign up before November 14, we will send you a special gift from APF.
As we prepare to wrap up, we wanted to share the links of 2 APF resources that we mentioned during the webinar, such as APF's website and also the program match tool. Other APF resources that we think might be helpful as you start searching and applying to APF's funding opportunities are the program FAQs and our program email address. As Gemma noted earlier about the program FAQ, it's really a great source of information about the application and application process. And I just want to encourage you to review this page before submitting an application. Our program email address, which is programs@ampsychfdn.org, is available for you to reach out to us. My piece of advice is to first review the resources listed on the slide. And if you still have questions, feel free to reach out to us via this email. And just want to note that due to high volume of inquiries, there might be a slight delay in responding to your emails. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dominique and so we could start the Q&A a little early, but hopefully we can answer some questions.
Of course. Thank you so much, Rebecca and Gemma. We have some questions that people submitted when they signed up for this webinar, but I actually wanted to just start by opening up to the individuals who are here live and in person. Feel free to unmute yourself and or type a question in the chat. I know we have some very specific questions in the Q&A section that might be just better addressed one-on-one individually in that section too. And so I'll give a minute for anybody who would like to go ahead and ask their question here live. In that case, we'll jump into some of the themes of questions that I'm seeing come up quite a bit for the two of you to address. We've had several questions submitted about eligibility for international students, and what things they can be looking for, and if it doesn't specifically state a requirement of nationality or being in the US, if that means that it is available to an international applicant.
Gemma, go ahead.
Yes, so international applicants are reviewed and considered similarly as applicants from the US. And we have received many questions asking about the project they are working on as well. Like, my project is about this country or that country is not related to the US. Is that okay? The answer is yes. Yes, we can. We also we have support many international projects. So if you meet the requirements for that grants or scholarships and your project aligns with that programs, please submit it. You will be considered just like other applicants. And also with the funding as well, like we can disperse to most countries. So it's not a problem.
Another question that we received is, how is a psychologist defined? Is that broadly? Does it require a doctorate in specific clinical psychology field, or is it open to other behavioral health providers?
So because we have 85 plus programs, you'll have to look at the specific webpage for that funding opportunity. Some of them are specific. It'll say a psychologist with a PhD or PsyD. They'll be very specific. Others are as long as you have a doctorate degree. So when we say psychologist, it's someone with a doctorate degree. But I would encourage you to go to the funding page of that specific opportunity and look and see what the eligibility criteria is. If you're still not sure, reach out to us via email.
Let me see here. For individuals who have you've spoken to targeting specific programs if an individual is interested in them. For those who have maybe applied to several programs or applied historically and have not received the answer that they would like, right? What is the best way to potentially get some feedback on areas that they could improve in their application?
We could tag team this, Gemma. So APF's policy is that we did not provide feedback to folks that maybe were declined their application for whatever reason. Primarily that's because capacity. We don't have enough staff to respond to that. But we do have some tips of like typically of like why we think applications don't proceed forward or weren't selected recipients. Please keep in mind though, a lot of our funding opportunities, we have great applications, like really stellar, excellent applications. Yet the funding opportunity only funds like one award for that particular program, for that particular grant or award or so forth. So it's very competitive. So please keep that in mind too. But Gemma, if you would explain sort of the general feedback we do provide to folks.
Yes, we know that we cannot provide feedback to individual applicants, but we have developed a document and we provide that in the announcement emails so applicants can access to document. What is that document? So that document, we collect all the mistakes or something that people, applicants can improve in their application. And we list it in that document. So when you get rejected email, you can look at that document and go by items and see if you have done something in those lists. For example, maybe your budget is incorrect, or maybe you submit, the document that you submit is not comprehensive. So if you can go through that list and see what else you can do better for the next opportunities. And just like Becky mentioned, we have so many good applications. So even though you didn't make any mistake and you did your best, you know, like some program is very competitive and it just not just it's not like you have problem. So you maybe next time.
Just to bid on that, there were some questions about whether there were any workshops provided for submitters in which they could gain more tips or guidance about strengthening their applications.
We're hoping this webinar will provide that, especially because we had 2 slides on like tips on submitting a strong application. Just please note that our reviewers in the end are the ones that select the recipients and identify who are the top recipients. So the one tip that I do want to emphasize, besides everything else that Gemma presented on, is making sure your proposed work, your proposed project that you're submitting aligns, matches, is a good fit with the funding opportunity that you're submitting for. Because if everything else is accurate, everything else is wonderful and excellent, it's really the project. Does it fit the purpose or goal of that funding opportunity? Ask yourself that question. And if so, and it's strong, you will be at the top.
And I think one thing that I can add here is I think some people ask like how much detail they have to provide for budgeting or some other section in the application. So we would like to have as details as possible because we have seen some application just say like, okay, we asked for 2,000 for participants, but there's no other details. So even though the number looks correct, but if you don't provide enough information, maybe you will not rank high in the review process. So try to provide as much as information you can. That will be very helpful for the review process.
And just briefly, I want to answer Felipa's question about this document. It's a generic, a general overview document that we compiled of things that we noticed that folks can improve on their next application if they're still eligible for that funding opportunity.
In regards to the different funding opportunities, there have been some questions about whether an applicant should try to optimize and maximize the amount of funding that is available to them. If it's more competitive, have less. Can you speak a little bit to that, please?
Yeah, I think Gemma mentioned this earlier too. We're going to emphasize quality over quantity. So again, going back to submitting high quality applications, making sure that the proposed work, the proposed research project aligns with the purpose and goal of that funding opportunity. On the webpage for that funding opportunity, it'll tell you specifically what the purpose is or what the goal is for that specific grant, scholarship award, whichever funding mechanism you're applying to. So I would encourage folks to submit high quality applications rather than a large number of applications that may or may not be a good fit for that funding opportunity. Gemma, do you want to add anything to that?
I think I can add that I have seen some applicants submit the first application and got selected as a recipient. I have seen some people submit several applications and never got selected. And also some people that they keep submitting and keep improving themselves. And finally they got selected and received funding from us. So I think just like Becky said, like focus on the quality. If you got rejected for this time, improve and try next year.
Let me take a look here. I think you've covered several of the themes here in the actual webinar itself that there are questions for. So I also encourage folks to go back and listen to the webinar and or utilize the resources that Rebecca and Gemma have put out there. Let me see here. And Gemma, are there other questions that you feel like you often get asked that we haven't proposed here or asked you about?
Right now I'm looking at like the last question we received about international applicants. There's no restriction. I believe like most country in the world, can apply and receive fund from APF. So yeah, I think I haven't seen any country that like cannot apply for APF. So there is no restriction at all.
I saw a question about pilot studies and clinical trials about the direct action visionary grants. So let me go back to that one. So we don't fund pilot studies if it's done in a research setting. To close the gap of research evidence and then putting it into practice, direct action visionary grants is really focused, if you think about dissemination and implementation science. So making sure that evidence-based interventions and resources are implemented in a real world setting. We will fund like something that, okay, we know there's evidence to support this intervention, but it hasn't been done in this applied setting, like a community mental health clinic or a particular behavioral health clinic. And you want to propose that work and submit for the direct action visionary grants. I'm just giving that as an example where you could actually submit an LOI for that. But pilot studies in a research, like an academic setting, that funding mechanism. Direct action visionary grants won't fund that. Hope that answers the question.
And I think I'd like to answer this one, the question from Maureen Chi, asking about like what amount of fund the budget should let me see. To apply for grants, do you recommend we request funding amount as close to the maximum of that grant? The answer is no, you don't have to. Just the amount that we have is the maximum. But if your project need less than that, you don't have to try to like make the number up to match the number. We focus more on the quality and the reasonable budget that you submitted. So make it real, and yeah, you don't have to try to match anything with the program requirements.
Chitra and Elaine, yes. Let's say your questions. I accidentally sent it to our panelists host chat, but yes, to answer your questions.
I think one person asked about private practice. There are many programs that also fund private practice as well. So you can use the search tools to look for that.
I'm pulling from our Q&A section as well. Let's see here. I'm not sure this differs across programs, but are there tend to be specific expectations for the final report and or the impact reports that then need to be submitted?
If you're a recipient, the final and impact reports are generally the same across funding opportunities. If you have questions about that, just ask us, email us about that.
There are also a number of questions about the visionary grant that seem to be a little more specific. Do we maybe want to go back to that slide and I can run through some of those?
So APF funding is only for 1 year. So regardless of the funding opportunities that you apply for, I do want to note that especially for grants, they're only for a 1-year project. Now, you could, because life happens, if you need an extension, you can request a no-cost extension. That's actually part of our terms and conditions. You can, if you are a recipient and you need to extend the project past a year, you can submit a no-cost extension request, and we'll work with you on that. But yes, 1-year timeframe.
For other questions, I'm going to read them specifically since you will understand them better than I do. Would the visionary grant be a good fit for the evaluation of a community developed intervention that has not been previously evaluated?
Yes, it could maybe even also fit the direct action visionary grants. So I hope we're not confusing you all. So there's direct action visionary grants, which is more in the, the application of an evidence-based intervention or resources in a real world setting. When I say that, I mean like, private practice or community mental health setting. The visionary grants, yes, like the way you described it, it could also be eligible for that. Think about like basic science too can fit under visionary grants. We're looking for innovative, not only research, but also educational projects that are pilot projects, educational projects too. So take a look at that webpage for the visionary grants, and if you still have questions, email us about it.
I could also just, if you started to do this, just differentiating between those visionary grants versus one of our direct action grants, and which one's an example of one of each, if possible.
Right. So let's say you're piloting an intervention, there's no data to support its effectiveness or outcomes, and it's innovative. It's going to be impactful, and it's being done in a, let's say, academic setting. I would apply for the visionary grants. Think about that as your seed grant funding. Thank you, Gemma. The visionary grants is your seed grant funding to like start your research program. And hopefully it'll expand after that. So pilot studies are welcomed in the visionary grants. So that's the difference between the direct visionary grants. Can we go to the other slide, Gemma? The direct action visionary grants. These are, you already have the evidence to support that intervention, but now you're going to apply it in a real world setting. You're going to implement it, and you need to evaluate, like, will this work for this community in need? And that's the main thing. We're looking at interventions for communities in need, because it is known that communities in need typically don't receive evidence-based interventions or resources. So this is what Direct Action Visionary Grants is focused on.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And is there a website or a place that interested applicants can go to look at or review previously awarded grants as a reference space or as insight into what has done well previously?
Yes, actually. So like for this QR code, if you go to the QR code for this funding opportunity, scroll all the way down the webpage and you'll see a list of past recipients. Yeah, just let them, if you go to that QR code for that funding opportunity, all of our funding opportunities have the list of recipients and the name of their projects. Just scroll down to the bottom of the webpage and you'll see a description, not a description, I'm sorry, just the title of their projects and where they're located.
And the two of you had spoken to this a little bit on the FAQ page about what to include in budgets, what's not to include. There seem to be some specific questions about just indirect costs, what counts as a necessity, a needed cost that should be covered, and whether there's coverage for overpay for PIs. And so I'm thinking maybe we can go back there and give folks a little reminder of where they can go for some of this information.
Yes. So, Gemma, you could talk about the direct and indirects, but I do want to reference the program FAQ. So the program FAQ webpage, that specific website is separated by different questions. If you open up each question, it'll give you a response. And this is a screenshot of what it looks like. And Gemma, do you want to go over some of those items?
Yeah, I mean, like, it's better to go and read because we put like a lot of details, but I can say that the direct cost is something that directly needed for the programs. And the indirect cost is more like something that you have to pay for the organization. Like I encourage you to read this section. It's like full details.
And another specific question we have is, do funding mechanisms support research that do not target human participants? For example, animal models or database things.
Yeah, I think we have received that questions many times. Like, yes, your project can be animal-based, but you need to clearly state that how this study or project will impact human population, and how you apply this study to human. So yeah, you can use the animal-based project to apply for APF grants.
And again, I'm going to encourage you to look at that specific funding opportunity, because some are very specific about what types of projects that program will fund. So keep that in mind too. Just read this program webpage, the funding opportunity webpage.
I'm going to read this one here for us. Given the competitiveness for all grants, especially with so much funding being cut for science in general, what are graduate students' prospects of being awarded grants when early career psychologists with doctorates are also applying for the same funding opportunities?
Yeah, that's a great question. So 77% of our funding opportunities target graduate students and early career psychologists and researchers. So what does that mean? We want to fund folks that are starting out earlier in their career, and it is very specific. And when I cite that statistic, it means that the funding opportunity primarily says that only those folks are eligible for those funding opportunities. So it'll say either doctoral graduate students or graduate students in general, and it'll say either the eligibility will say early career psychologists or early career researchers. Just take a look at those funding opportunities. APF is here to support and foster the development of psychologists, and also, as I noted before, to make sure that psychological science is still being done and that innovative work is being done in this area. So we're going to fund early career psychologists, researchers, and graduate students. Just take a look at the eligibility criteria. 77% of all of our programs focus with those two career stages.
Then Rebecca and Gemma, since, as I mentioned, there are also some very, very specific questions for specific individuals, what is the best way for them to get those questions asked when they're very targeted?
Yes. Gemma, will you show them again the program's email address? We're going to encourage you to email us at programs@ampsychfdn.org. And specifically ask us about that funding opportunity. You reviewed the webpage, you still have questions, just send it there. And what happens is our team is going to triage and send it to either me or Gemma to respond to that question. Or if it's something that APF staff can respond to, they will. So I encourage you to contact us via our program email address.
Right. I want to be mindful of time. And unless Rebecca, there's anything else that you wanted to add, actually close us out.
Just want to say thank you all for participating and asking some great questions. We do encourage you to look at our funding opportunities and apply for it. We know folks are diversifying their funding sources, especially as they start creating their research program. I'm hoping our community that we created here will lead to some great innovative work. And Dominique, thank you for being our moderator today.
Of course, of course. All right, well, that is all the time that we have for today's webinar. Thank you to all of you for taking the time to join us and, like I was saying, engage in the discussion here. Please feel free to direct any specific questions around programs like they've mentioned into the program email. For those of you that are early career psychologists or early career just behavioral health providers in general, you're also welcome to reach out to the Committee on Early Career Psychology at earlycareer@apa.org. A reminder that the recording will be available on APF's website in the upcoming weeks. We just thank you to all of you for being here today.